Happy Valentine's Day, everyone! I may not be an expert in love, but I do know me some Final Fantasy characters and relationships to celebrate this day. This is a series that focuses heavily on its characters and their dynamics, so of course we'll find many instances of some nice, feel-good romance that connects with the audience. But maybe more importantly, some emotional, heart-wrenching ones that leave a huge impact on the players. And I'll be sharing today what I consider to be some of the most memorable and best couples and moments all around. In no particular order, maybe except for the last 3 of the list. Make sure to like, subscribe and all that gist for more Final Fantasy content. Thank you very much. I think it's proper to start with the dad and mom of the series, the first proper romantic couple of a bunch of protagonists. What's more appropriate than having an established couple whose first cutscene has a song playing called Theme of Love. And more importantly, having some dramatic conversation, with Cecil Harvey feeling down on himself for the actions he is committing and a reassuring Rosa Farrell that encourages him, saying how the man that she loves is a great person. Establishing the relationship as the main one, but whose fate is uncertain because of the roles and missions they have within the kingdom. When the journey starts and Cecil's path deviates from their kingdom, Rosa is going to start her own search to find him, and her travels will lead her to a desert town where she contracts a fever before Cecil arrives and finds her, proceeding of course to find a way to help her so she can join the party, catching up about the recent events and deciding to travel together this time, despite Cecil worries about her health at first, but understanding that it's her wish to stay together. The next memorable moment will happen after Rosa gets kidnapped by the main antagonist Golbez, knowing that she is key to manipulate both Cain on his side and Cecil to give him what he wants, having her not only as a prisoner but also extremely close to get executed by one of his sides. When Cecil is able to save her at the last second and properly have an intimate moment, as it's the right place to openly share their feelings toward each other and share what I consider the first kiss on screen shown in the series. And of course, our already established main couple that will stay together in the final fight of the game too, will have the best ending possible, as the final scene of the game takes place at the day of their wedding, having each character arriving as guests and congratulating them as they become the new king and queen of Baron. Well, maybe except one petty character, but overall everyone is here celebrating the end of the journey in the nicest way possible. Not to mention, they also became the first couple to properly have children when the sequel came out years later, so they have also that going on for them, and the reason I like to call them the dad and mom of Final Fantasy characters. Locke Celes from Final Fantasy VI will meet Celeste's chair for the first time as he sneaks in to rescue her when she is being tortured for betrayal to the Empire, and with a first encounter like that, you can feel some sparks in the air. At least with a Casanova like him who's very charming with his words, insisting to escape together despite her doubts. He even was very adamant to defend her every time someone doubted her because of her past as an Empire general. They also have their cheesy moments too though, during the iconic opera scene where he follows her rehearsal closely and gets a little bit flustered by her looks and such. And of course ending up being part of the play himself, where he acts as a surprise love interest of Celeste. And even later refusing to the idea of her marrying Setzer if the toss of a coin says so. Clearly being presented as a duo with a closer relationship and interactions than with the rest. But for me personally, these two are very charming to see interact because they are dramatic AF. And it's one of the features I love the most when seeing a love story. Starting with the event at the Empire where meeting Sid, he would imply that Celeste is faking her betrayal to the Empire and Locke would be the one to react strongly to this, as Kefka throws more fuel to the fire and Celeste tries to prove her loyalty. And this would extend later when seeing her again, getting a specific cutscene of these two awkwardly talking about that with some unsolved feelings. I mean, just look at this. I'd watch a telenovela with them as the main couple. After the time skip where we mainly follow Celeste, we search for everyone, and when finding Locke, we learn a little bit more of his background and a closure to his story. In the past, Locke became romantically involved with a woman named Rachel, and when taking her out to different adventures like through a dangerous cave, she would have an accident by trying to save him of falling down from a bridge. And as she was brought back home, she'd wake up without her memories, leaving a dejected Locke that wasn't that welcome by her family either. Not only that, but later during the invasions, Locke would learn that Rachel was a victim of it, and her body rests at one of the houses. Refusing to accept this, he sets up to find a way to revive her, to making up for his mistakes. So when we find him, he will be attempting to use the Esper Phoenix on her. For an instant, the miracle would happen, but only for Rachel to have one last conversation, reaffirming her love for him, not regretting to sacrifice her life for his safety, and wishing him to let go of any of his guilt that stops him from moving forward, allowing himself to love again as he loved her. And while this is very nice of her, it is pretty telling that after this conversation about moving on with no guilt and a new love, it is Celes the one staying behind waiting for him, and talking about the events that just unfolded. Not to mention that during the ending of Final Fantasy VI, one of the best of the series, when going through the credits of the cast, Locke and Celes will be shown together, and their scene will be like a perfect full circle moment, as they have a similar moment to the one that made Rachel fall into that accident, but this time Locke won't allow this to happen, holding her and escaping together. On a side note, when the time skip starts, you have two routes. Either her grandpa Sid dies and Celes attempts to take her own life, where the presence of a bird with a bandana similar to the one that Locke wears gives her the motivation to not give up, or Sid survives and asks Celes to take care of herself and come back safely, maybe even with that guy Locke, so he is closely linked to her motivations too. Zack Fair and Aerith Gainsborough in Crisis Core is a sweet young love story. You have your typical charming boy that can be some of a sweet talker, like Zidane in Final Fantasy IX, but as soon as he meets his perfect match in Aerith, he'll become the most devoted man ever. They'll be really cute from day one, from their first meeting being surprisingly blunt with each other, to spending the rest of the day at Sector 5, having a date involving some monster hunting to help kids, interacting with different people at the slums, and having wholesome shopping. Finishing with the sweet moment of Zack buying Aerith the famous pink ribbon, per her request, as a memento for the first day together.
Thank you, Zack. I'll treasure this.
What I think what makes these two memorable besides the pure sweet moments shopping for each other and flirting here and there, is the conversations that they have occasionally that are heavily focused on the idea of being normal or not. At this point, Zack will be struggling with his own self being a soldier, as everyone around him starts transforming into monsters themselves, questioning how much of that he also is. While Aerith silently struggles with the idea that she isn't normal, not only for reasons that she expressed like being scared of the sky, but also because we know that she's a Cetra, and that her childhood involves some other kids being weirded out by her abilities to sense souls of people who died, reassuring each other that it's completely fine to not be normal, feeling comfortable to be themselves around each other. And also when they are their emotional support, for example when Zack lost his mentor and Jill, and he searched for comfort visiting her church to cry his heart out safely next to her. Another sweet moment where you see their supportive relationship is how they work together to create a flower wagon, so Aerith can share the flowers she tends at the church elsewhere, promising to go together to the upper plate so she doesn't feel frightened by the sky, and also to fulfill the other 23 tiny wishes that she has. Well, here's the sad part. After the Nibelheim incident, Zack would disappear for more than 4 years, and as he gets to read the list of 23 wishes, he finds out that Aerith wrote that more than the tiny wishes, she has one special wish instead, and that's to spend more time with him. You can imagine what Zack could feel when reading this, as he resolves to come back to Midgar, especially after being able to read a final letter written by Aerith, who for these past years has been writing and sending 88 letters in the hopes they reach him. So far pretty emotional stuff, but unfortunately, Zack would be found and murdered right before arriving to Midgar. And supposedly Aerith, who has a special ability to sense the soul of the deceased, is able to notice something. Whether she is in denial or not, that's for her to say. During the original game, after we get the full picture, we can see that Aerith is doing her best to move on. Which is good, as seen before with Locke. It would be sad to be stuck in your past love for more than 5 years. You can see how worried her mother is by meeting a new guy who is oddly similar to the previous one. She is doing her best. Her feelings are not yet resolved. Meeting Zack's parents maybe doesn't help to that, as there's also the mystery of what really happened to him. But she is trying hard to move forward. For me, her charming point is the struggle of her confusing feelings and how to deal with them. You can feel for her. And on the other side, you have Zack traveling through the livestream, refusing to accept his fate and trying to still protect his love, reminding us how incredibly devoted the man is. Who knows what the future holds for them in the afterlife. One of the proper themes of Final Fantasy VIII is love, and there's a fascinating set of events here around it. First, let's talk about Best Boy Laguna, presented as a soldier that is in love with this singer at the bar he frequents. He's just a fan having a crush with an impossible love, right? Well, the thing is that while he's very oblivious, the singer Julia also has a crush on him, to the point that she composed the best song in Final Fantasy history. But unfortunately for them, a military mission made Laguna end up in a completely different place, living a new life, as Julia proceeded to marry another man. So this one, it's a love that could not be. Laguna instead will meet Rain at the new town of Windhill, where she's going to take care and nurse him into good shape after finding him. And as a token of gratitude, Laguna will become the self-appointed monster hunter of the town, and helping Rain with anything basically, bonding with her and her adopted daughter named Elone. Thanks to the girl's curiosity about the relationship, Laguna will realize that this is the place he wants to be, as they fall in love with each other. Unfortunately, later Elone will be kidnapped and Laguna will leave the place to rescue her, leaving Rain behind, who was pregnant with their son, and that will be the last time they'll be together. While Laguna was successful in rescuing Elone, he could not come back before Rain passed away, and their son Squall was taken to Edea's orphanage. As a final dagger in my heart, we are able to see the scene when he proposed to her, as he reminisces of that moment at her grave once everything is finished. Probably among my favorite moments of the game. But none of them are the protagonist. These are instead the mentioned Squall and Rinoa. And the love story to me is appealing after the events of Disc 2. Rinoa fell unconscious after the Edea fight, and Squall, realizing how important she really is for him, refuses to leave her side, understanding that he wants to find a way to save her back to health, in a way that will defy many rules and logic to get that done. And that dedication is one of the nicest things to see. One key aspect of Squall is that we learn about his feelings through his thoughts, not dialogue. So while carrying an unconscious Rinoa, we can see him opening up to her about his deepest fears and insecurities. Later, when Rinoa is left to die on space, thanks to his big sis Elone, he'll be able to witness her memories about him, and also send her a message to prevent her from dying, as she'll be drifting alone in the middle of nowhere with no hope. Having a beautiful moment where we see Rinoa seeing the rings that she made that matches the one Squall has, reminding her of him as a cue to trust in him and not give up all hope yet. In another show of devotion, Squall will leave the ship and throw himself into the vast space to rescue Rinoa, ignoring everyone's warnings, which of course he does, as they end up in the spaceship known as Ragnarok. Once there, communicating with the land base, this informs that Rinoa is to be seized upon returning to the Earth, as she is labeled a sorceress, and they share a lovely moment with again the best song playing. Squall's declaration that he won't leave her alone, even if that means becoming an enemy of the world, is one of the most emblematic moments in their relationship in my opinion, along with the iconic cinematic moment of him freeing her later on from the Sorcerer's Memorial, probably the closest scene to the logo of the game. At the end of the game, their promise to meet each other once again and the resolution to not forget about the other during time compression will allow them to come back and have their sweet moment together, sealing it with a kiss, in a happy ending this time. What's the interesting unfolding of events here? It's that Squall, the son of Laguna, and Rinoa, the daughter of Julia, ended up together, when they previously had a potential love that could not be developed instead, in a fun twist of events. Fate surely has a sense of humor. Now, let me add a specific segment for those couples that were established from the beginning, meaning that by the time the game starts, we learn pretty quickly who are already in a romantic relationship. And I understand this concept, independent of the characters, tend to be less recognized, because it's normal for any person to want to see something develop and unfold in front of their eyes, not just being told outright. But both Snow and Sarah in Final Fantasy XIII and Noctis and Lunafreya in Final Fantasy XV have something specific going for them, and it's all the struggles they have to go through, with some tragedy of course. In Snow and Sarah's case, for example, the latter is going to be cursed to be turned into a monster or crystallized forever, and when she was first casted by this curse, she attempted to leave everyone behind and accept her fate, which basically means death. And Snow, refusing to leave things like that, seek for her to share this fate and has the resolution to find a way together, not leaving her alone in this situation. And even after she turned into a crystal, he refused to leave her side as much as possible and always proceed with the hopes of seeing her again, with a strong stance that was even able to convince the likes of Lightning. But if I have to recognize something that is more loyal and committed than probably any other husband ever, is that after Final Fantasy XIII too, Sarah lost her life and the world got frozen for 500 years. And it's revealed that Snow lived all those years and days without stopping thinking about her, and how he failed to protect her back then. He is carrying the weight of the entire world doomed to an end, leading everyone to have a somehow fulfilling life until the moment arrives, all while being inspired and motivated by Sarah's wishes, drowned in guilt and not leaving their memento behind. As seen with Locke and Aerith, there's nothing wrong with moving on, but the fact that this guy spent 500 years suffering and mourning his true love is a dedication that you don't see often.
No man can stare into the darkness for so long and survive with his soul intact.
In the case of Noctis and Luna, the tragedy will arrive when we are told that they are going to get married, and a certain Ardyn appears to ruin the show. They have of course their sad farewells in symbolic ways that are well made in my opinion. The transition from their models and the scenario it takes place to show Luna delivering the ring to him is pretty nice. But truth be told, the main reason I'm mentioning them here is because while the ending is pretty emotional, it is also pretty satisfying to watch them together at the end like that, even despite any lack of a proper love story being shown in-game instead. The logo transition is just too good. Kicking off my personal top 3 favorite couples, Clive Rosfield and Jill Warwick are the latest duo of protagonists in a mainline game, and they are a very welcome addition, because their love story is told up front. And they have something that I love, which is history, knowing each other when they grew up at Rosaria, being friends and having a routine of watching at the moon together, known as Metia, on the night sky of Palistea, but weren't able to fully develop their relationship before the tragic events of the invasion happened. They would reunite 13 years later, first as enemies until Clive realized who she was, and she, being the only familiar thing to his now destroyed hometown and family, of course will do everything he can to stay together once again, as it may be the only time they both felt happiness since that tragic day. And they go through a path of coming to terms with their past and their personal struggles, supporting each other. Just like how Clive has to go through the path of accepting the truth of being the dominant of fire that apparently killed Joshua, or how Jill has to come to terms with her past and guilt of being used by the Iron Kingdom cult as a weapon, being the dominant of ice. In either case, they have each other to lean on, and occasionally have some interrupted or unfinished intimate moments, but they will be just hints of what's to come. 5 years later, and already established as the leaders of their outlaw group, we'll witness these more intimate moments between them. sharing their naked souls to each other in more than just one way. Which summarizes why when I need to describe the relationship, the word intimate comes very often. Luckily for us, we are able to see some feel-good moments between these two towards the end of the game, thanks to the special quest Concern for Jill, after she lost her own icon in the process. Clive decides to give her a nice moment to remember, by finding a special spot with her favorite flower since she was a child, the snow daisies, spending their time together in this field, making it for a pretty romantic scene, reminiscing of old times and enjoying their present together, even if it's for a small moment.
Everything. It's exactly what I needed. You are my treasure.
Unluckily, at the end of the game, Clive will leave to confront Ultima and will have an emotional farewell with Jill, voicing clearly their feelings for each other, which is always welcome despite being obvious. And we have a last bittersweet moment as they hold on to each other and Clive departs, especially knowing what happens later, with the moon, once again just like at the start of the game, as the witness, link and symbol of their relationship. Tidus and Yuna are the two protagonists of Final Fantasy X, and from the start you can't help but feel attached to them. Maybe objectively there's nothing concrete at first, other than being the main duo and the youngest that makes the pilgrimage refreshing, joking around with each other and having some glances here and there, much to the adults' dismay.
What are you looking at?
But personally, what I think it makes these two a step above the rest starts after the big revelation of what the pilgrimage really is. At least to Tidus, who until this point just thought this was a journey to defeat Sin and come back, unaware that Yuna's role as the summoner was to give her own life to stop Sin for 10 years. He will learn about this truth and remember all the conversations where he talked about the future with her and feeling guilty about it. But more importantly, from that point forward, he is going to have a change in his attitude and demeanor, focusing always in finding a way to not send Yuna to her own death for the sake of the world, even if every answer leads to that so far. Among these plans, and sharing a moment together for the first time after finding the truth, the couple will try to make things heartwarming and less glooming, thinking of a potential future together. But Yuna eventually will break down as she can't help but avoid the truth of her fate, leading to one of the most iconic moments in Final Fantasy history, as Tidus comforts her like this. It goes without saying that this moment gives Yuna the support and happiness she was looking for after being almost all the time doing her best to show a strong, convinced stance with no weakness. So for the first time, she allowed herself to break down and be comforted instead. Tidus' love and dedication is so strong during that second half of the game that he effectively defies the usual beliefs and stops the cycle of the summoner giving their own life to stop Sin, attempting to put an end to it in a different way. The bad part is that he doesn't belong to this world really, and putting an end to Sin also means putting an end to Dream Samarkand, which includes him. The farewell and sad end of Tidus and Yuna's love story is ironically a big reason for their impact and recognition, as these type of endings with these words shared between the two of them and the beautiful music playing along will have a strong impact in the fanbase, making it probably the most iconic ending in Final Fantasy, I dare to say. But from a love story perspective, I want to highlight the dedication and serious mode that Tidus, often labeled as a dumb boy, went into after the truth was revealed, in order to stop Yuna to sacrifice herself for the well-being of everyone else. That is a commendable action from him. Let's pretend that their story ends there, by the way. If I have to say quickly why I think Cloud Strife and Tifa Lockhart has the best love story in Final Fantasy, it'd be because they have history together, and that it's a roller coaster of emotions, not just an always increasing straight line. And that to me is important in a relationship story. From the beginning, we know that Cloud and Tifa will be referred to officially as the childhood friends, or any other word for the term Osada Najimi, which is a pretty common relationship trope in many Japanese media. I guess the girl next door type of trope would be valid too, as they are both from the hometown of Nibelheim. We see that first in the game with a flashback when they were kids, and Cloud called Tifa to meet at the water tower at night because there was something he wanted to tell her, sharing his dreams and objectives to move to Midgard to become a hero like Sephiroth. Tifa, with the hopes of seeing him again, proposed to make a promise for him to save her when she is in a pinch, having that moment to hold on to when they are far from each other the next few years. When they were even younger, Cloud and Tifa, being neighbors, used to play together, but something happened that made them grow distant. Tifa's mother passed away, and in her grief, by hearing the tales that the spirits of the dead go through the dangerous Mount Nibel, she hoped to find her mother once again, running off to the mountains with her friends, with a silent, reserved Cloud following behind. This would end up in Tifa having an accident there, with the kids all escaping in fear and only Cloud staying behind to help her. But as she fell into a coma without remembering what happened, and everyone else's account convincing them that it was Cloud the reason she got into this, they drifted away silently. Because of Cloud's personality, he never stood up to clarify what happened, and instead took the blame and silently searched ways to become someone strong, able to protect Tifa when she was in danger, so that never happened again, which is the reason he called her to the water tower. During this time, Tifa, while doubtful of the stories told to her, still watched Cloud from afar as someone intimidating with minimal interactions. She looked up to him. He was a beautiful, untouchable presence, like a star glittering in the distant sky. So after hearing his own dreams, she discovered that Cloud, the quiet neighbor who had always seemed unreachable as the stars, was just a normal boy like any other. And it was this realization that made her come to understand that she liked him. The special kind of like that makes you yearn to be with that person for the rest of your days. 2 years later, a group of 2 soldiers and grunts have been assigned a mission in Nibelheim, and while Tifa was hopeful to see him here, he was nowhere to be found, only Zack and Sephiroth. The truth is that Cloud is the grunt that was with them, but ashamed of even showing his face to her after not being able to fulfill his promise of becoming an elite soldier, he hid himself, not even being able to speak a word in front of her to avoid being recognized, but always still doing his best to protect her. While Tifa also does her best to know a little bit more information about him from Zack, resulting in what is known as the mutual pining stage of their relationship. And while these small hints that you see in Rebirth or Crisis Core are great for foreshadowing reasons, this is the point of the story where Sephiroth finds out about his origin and the Genova in him triggers to start out his path of burning villages, which will cause the death of everyone, including Tifa's father, which is why she also ended up mortally wounded when confronting Sephiroth. Cloud, witnessing that, and enraged by the death of his mother and Tifa, is able to make the miracle to overcome the great hero Sephiroth into what is known as his death. But not having strength to move on, he is captured along Zack to be experimented on for the next 5 years. 5 years later, Zack will be able to escape Nibelheim with an unconscious Cloud to try reach Midgard as we said before. But he gets killed and Cloud is able to reach the slums alone, where meeting Tifa will make him regain his consciousness because she called up to him. But this will make him create his own fake persona that involves his real memories with Zack's experiences, creating an atmosphere of mystery that lingers the reunion. Funny enough, the game hasn't started yet. That is the setting for the main story of FF7, and we'll see the stage of their relationship having ups and downs from now on, as Cloud will tell everyone the recollection of these past events, but from this fake persona he unconsciously built, so it both matches and not with Tifa's own vague memories, creating that interesting struggle of her to try to figure things out while not causing any bad blood between them. In Rebirth, we'll immediately have these conflicts shown more, causing the two to get into arguments when trying to talk about the past, as Cloud is literally blocking a big part of himself and his memories. Eventually sorting things out while being careful around each other, especially Tifa, not trying to cause more fights and both agreeing to try to solve things out together, still with many unspoken doubts and feelings. As Sephiroth is a stronger presence that is allowed to trigger these personality issues in attempts to put Cloud against Tifa, it will cause more drama and conflict, like Cloud becoming almost into puppet mode and straight up attacking her, making a parallel to the moment Sephiroth attacked her at the reactor. And of course, the following reaction of a heartbroken Cloud at the realization of what he has just done, thinking of the worst outcome possible. After Tifa regains her consciousness, with new memories of the events that happened when they were kids, they have a heart-to-heart conversation, as they reach a point where it's not only just a weird conflict of memories, but this time he lost completely control over his own body and caused her harm. Cloud will open up to her about his own fears and insecurities, as she allows him to express himself over this, scared of himself and what could happen to him, with a Tifa that gains a stronger resolution to be that anchor that he needs to ground him as best as she can and find a solution together to this. This is one of the most important aspects of them. Being vulnerable in any relationship, openly sharing your thoughts, feelings and emotions with someone, including and more importantly insecurities and weaknesses, without fear of judgment, essentially allowing them to see the real you and building a deeper connection through honesty and authenticity. It involves taking a risk to expose yourself emotionally in order to foster trust and intimacy. And while this out of context is already beautiful, we are talking here about Cloud's Strife, the character whose main arc is about finding his true self and figuring out what's wrong with him that makes him so fearful, and of course makes Tifa as fearful and confused, as she's also trying to figure that out. That's why it's lovely to see that they are each other anchors when they are in emotional distress. Oh, and also during these moments where they allow themselves to enjoy some time together, they have this interaction in case it wasn't obvious enough, so that's very cute. At least they are not that oblivious. But to arrive to a proper satisfying conclusion, they'll have to go through their worst, to hit rock bottom if you may. And as I said before, angst is almost a mandatory thing for a great love story. Back to the original game, these two will be drifted away once Sephiroth fully manipulates Cloud at the northern crater, into believing he is not even real. And Tifa, not being able to refute that, as she doesn't have the full picture of the events from the past, has a second where she is not able to trust Cloud's existence as she always knew it, making him finally snap and fall victim into being convinced he is a Genova puppet, causing him to say farewell and following Sephiroth's orders. As a fun fact, when Cloud is telling everyone, especially Tifa, that he is sorry, in Japanese he says Tifa-san, which shows a distance between them, as he doesn't think anymore that he is the guy that was close to her, to the point that he is talking about wishing her to meet Cloud-kun soon, fully embracing that the figure of that childhood friend might be another person completely. So when things hit rock bottom, we have to bounce back, and the relationship will reach their climax during the livestream event, after Tifa found her resolution of leaving all those doubts behind, and completely believe that the Cloud she remembers is the real one from her childhood, refusing to believe in Sephiroth's words, and exploring the subconscious of a comatose Cloud to unlock the truth, and to do so, she will guide him slowly, step by step, to figure out the events of the past. On it, Cloud will reveal his true feelings of his childhood, the motivation of leaving Nibelheim to become a hero so he could protect and be noticed by Tifa, his point of view of the events at the Mount Nibel incident and how he felt so down on himself by that he took the blame, and to be someone strong being able to save her. And more importantly, the true events of the Nibelheim incident, where still hidden as a grunt, was able to overcome Sephiroth and, in fact, protect Tifa when she was in a pinch. Tifa may have her last name being Lockhart because she is the one able to guide Cloud to unlocking all the memories and reveals of his true self and past. Because when his hometown is burned to ashes, his family is gone, and his memories are unreachable, the only link to his past left alive is Tifa. She is the undeniable proof that Cloud ever existed, bringing his true self back, and for the first time in the game, the real Cloud Strife appears. One of the beautiful aspects about that is that from Tifa's point of view, her love started to bloom not when he was this mysterious loner kid, or when he is in hero mode being cool and whatnot, but rather when she was able to see through that he is just a normal dorky kid, with dreams and desires, even admiring his way to live of not trying to fit in any mold or group, no matter what others may say. And finally, the night before the final showdown against Sephiroth, Clive and Tifa shared the night under the High Wing, as everyone came back to where they belong with their loved ones, and they only have each other. This is another opportunity to share their true feelings with each other, and confirm them in a way that cannot be conveyed with words, if you know what I mean. A very romantic setting when you realize that this could be the final day they'll be with each other, unknowing of what their fate awaits in the final fight, even if they emerge victorious, putting a nice bow to their quite rich story with a lot of ups and downs, not being perfect, and many years in the making, which is what makes them compelling as a romance pairing, making them, for me, the best love story in Final Fantasy. But let me know if you have your favorite one that I didn't mention. I'm sure there's many stories told in the MMOs, and some others that hint at relationship existing. I thought about mentioning Vanille and Fang at some point. So in summary, we are celebrating Valentine's with Cecil and Rosa, the first Final Fantasy main couple to share a kiss on screen, to have a wedding, and even later a son. Locke and Celes, a love that bloomed with the hopes of moving forward and not be stuck in the past. Zack and Aerith, a young couple with a lot of comfort, allowing each other to be themselves with no fear of judgment. Laguna and Rain, a new love born from the feeling of being at peace at the place they feel they belong to. Squall and Rinoa, a pair that will become an enemy of the world if it means to fight for their love and desire to be together. Established couples like No and Sarah or Noctis and Luna that are put to test with a tragic fate but still fight to stick together. Clive and Jill, a quite intimate couple who's always supporting each other emotionally and in combat for many years. Tidus and Yuna, a young love that will always prioritize the other's well-being over their own, even if it means a sad farewell. And Cloud and Tifa, a childhood friend to lover story, who shared their vulnerabilities so much that she'll explore his own subconscious to find his true self. Thank you very much for watching, enjoy some Final Fantasy, and I'll see you later. Love you!